You should put all your vocal tracks into one bus for specifically vocals and all your instrument tracks into one bus. This is because you can then put a loudness meter on both of them and compare them. A good balance is when they have both the same LUFS, which is basically the same loudness. You should put chords, melody and drums into individual buses so you can put plugins that affect all instruments together and change the volume however you want. Also, every track in your song should go into one bus that has half a second of reverb. This makes the song sound like it's coming from one space and makes it more coherent. You should make sure that your kick drum is in the correct key of your song. You can use a spectrum analyzer to check this. Usually you want your kick and bass in mono. This of course depends on the song, but usually this is the case. You should use compression and saturation to glue your instruments together. For example, the buses that I mentioned before, you can put compression and saturation on the drums to make them sound coherent. Also, you can put it on the master bus to make your song sound even better. Parallel compression is when you use the uncompressed signal and combine it with the compressed signal of a track. This means that you will get the tight punch of the compressed signal, but still keep the dynamics of the uncompressed. You can use plugins like Autopan, Stereo Expander and the Haas effect to create width. The Haas effect delays either the left or the right side slightly to create the illusion of width. The next tip is to copy others. By that I mean you should listen to songs by your favorite artists and try to emulate what they are doing. For example, their drum patterns, their sound choices, how their vocals sound, anything really. If you are a beginner, this is crucial for you to develop faster. By doing this, your songs will not become unoriginal. You will eventually develop your own sound the more you practice. You should adjust the velocity and timing on MIDI notes to make it more human. For example, if you have a drum fill, the drummer wouldn't play everything at the same volume. By making notes slightly off the grid, you make it sound more human. To make things sound even more human, you should record stuff. It doesn't matter how good your microphone is, you just go out there and record random sounds. To add texture to your songs, you should have some background noise. This could be anything really. You can for example just record your silent room and turn up the gain and boom, you have some background noise. You should make a custom template to save time. This can include all of your patterns, favorite instruments and all the mixer tracks ready and organized. This makes it so that you don't have to start from scratch every time you open a project. I will link in the description a video on how to make your custom template. Another way to quickly get going is to use samples. You can for example use Cymatics samples because a lot of them are free and high quality. Also, you can save sounds and make your own sample pack. You can for example make synths or record stuff. This sample pack will contain your unique sound that no other music producer has. To save even more time, you should save presets on plugins, VST and mixer tracks. Anything that you think sounds good is worth saving. But if you make a bad song, do not delete it. It might be useful later. You can for example put all of your songs that you think are bad into one folder and check in there every once in a while. You should also learn shortcuts. For example, in FL Studio, if I select items and then press Ctrl B, it will select the items directly to the right. Learning shortcuts saves so much of your valuable time. Transitions are between parts of songs. For example, when you go from the verse to the chorus. To make the chorus more impactful, you can use silence right before. You can do this because it creates contrast. Another way to make contrast is to automate a filter effect right before the chorus. This is normal in EDM tracks. You can also use drum fills and risers before the chorus. You can also simply make the chorus louder by automating a gain knob on your master bus. Just make the chorus 1 or 2 dB louder and boom! You can automate reverb before the chorus to make it really ambient and then bring it back. You can also automate the stereo width to make it wider and then make it more mono in the chorus, for example, or the other way around. You should also put random sound effects throughout your song. This makes your song sound less monotone. In theory, the more sound effects you put into your song, the better it becomes. You should automate the send knob on vocals. This means that you can, for example, make a delay effect on only one word instead of the entire sentence.
If there's anything you need.
You should also send your vocal to a reverb bus. You can put a delay on the reverb and then use a limiter to sidechain the reverb to the actual vocal. Also, you can use EQ to cut out the high end, for example. You should also sidechain your bass to your kick. In FL Studio, you can again use a limiter to achieve this. I already have the sidechain set up in my custom template so that I don't have to make it every time. For your drums, you should use more percussion than just snare, kick, hi-hat and open hats. You could just tap your table or use, for example, a cowbell. When you try to layer instruments, you should be focusing on texture, not volume. If you layer an instrument on top of another, it should be different. For example, you can make it wider or play in a slightly different frequency range. The next tip is to take breaks. This could mean that you limit your session times to like 1 hour. Or if you're feeling burnt out, just take a week-long break. The human mind is not built to constantly keep working, so please take breaks. If you have instruments that cause a lot of lag in your DAW, you should export that to audio. Not only will it reduce lag, it will also force you to use what you already have and stop you from overthinking. Another way to reduce lag is to change the buffer length. By making the buffer length longer, you reduce lag. In the intro, you can use filter and volume automation to slowly bring the instruments into life. My favorite layering technique with snares is that you have a dry snare and then you combine it with a snare that has 100% reverb. You get the tight punch of the dry snare and then the wetness of the other snare. When making your songs, you should focus on keeping it simple. Do not overcomplicate things. If you think about your favorite songs, they're most likely pretty simple. Complicated tracks usually makes the listener confused about what they should listen to. You should focus on having one star element in every part of your song. To make your chords more interesting, you should add sevenths and ninths. For example, if you have a C major chord, this would be a C major 7 and this would be a C major 9. To be good at music production, you should learn basic music theory. A cool effect is the tape stop effect. This is a free plugin that emulates that effect. For example, here I use it on the end of a song. If you make lo-fi, for example, you should make things sound bad on purpose. This could mean using BitCrush or slightly changing the pitch over time. There's also this free plugin called OCS45, which imitates cassette tapes. You should automate the length of the reverb on your vocals for different parts of the songs. For example, in the verse, you could make the reverb longer. You can also automate the reverb on specific words, so that, for example, at the end of the sentence, the reverb becomes really long. You can automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right. You can also automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right. You can also automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right. You can also automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right. You can also automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right. You can also automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right. You can also automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right. You can also automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right. You can also automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right. You can also automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right. You can also automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right. You can also automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right. You can also automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right. You can also automate the panning on a one-time sound effect to make it go from left to right When using a reverb, you should use less than you think that you should. For example, you should probably never go above 50% and you should make the tail of the reverb slightly shorter than you think. The only time that you want to go above 50% if you go all the way to 100. 100% reverb is useful, for example, reverb on vocals. If you're struggling to make music consistently, you should set deadlines. For example, I have set a goal for myself to make 50 songs this year. This forces me to show up all the time and make music. If you think about a school project, what is it that pushes you to actually do it? That's right, the deadline. There is no such thing as writer's block. If you don't feel like making music or you're uninspired, you should still open up your DAW and put a timer. If you just start, you will immediately feel better about yourself. The next tip is to just listen to a lot of music. The more music you listen to, the more ideas you have for your own productions. This links back to the thing I said about copying others. When doing sound design, you should be weird. You don't have to follow any rules. You can, for example, use a guitar pedal on a piano. Try to be weird and make something cool. When making a song, you should focus on having good sounds. Also, if you're in the mixing process, no amount of plugins will fix a bad sound. What I have learned from making a lot of music is that you cannot have loudness if you don't have silence. The chorus will not sound loud if the entire song has the exact same energy level. Experiment with taking some instruments out in specific sections. This could actually make your songs better. When producing, you should have a low volume. This is because if it sounds good when it's quiet, it will sound amazing when it's loud. Also, this will reduce ear fatigue. You should use EQ to cut out unnecessary low end and high end on bass to make room for all the instruments. If you're struggling to make catchy melodies, you can use your voice and sing a melody. This melody will be simple and it will ensure that it's singable, so it's probably catchy. The last tip is that expensive gear will not make your music good. Your experience will. The best producer with stock plugins still makes better songs than you with the most expensive plugins. So just keep making music and practicing. If you want plugins that won't cost you a dime, check out this video.